Swain. The two items that have been amended on the agenda is the revised council meeting minutes of June 8th with specific item of Councillor Stout's notice of motion being included into the agenda. And the other one was the council meeting minutes where we had Councillor Stout's notice of motion being made by Mayor Stewart, and we have made that amendment. Those are two amendments that we've made.
Okay, no problem with that, obviously. I just wasn't aware of what those were, so thanks for clarification.
No worries. Further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously, which brings us to the consent agenda. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting minutes of June 8th, 2021 revised. Item 5B, regular committee of the whole meeting minutes of June 15th, 2021. Item 8E, council policy C48, taxation policy approval. Item 8F, council policy C49, land management policy approval. Item 8G, land use bylaw monitoring and urban design guidelines committee. And item 14A, the regional initiatives update. And of course, you'll be able to ask questions on that if you need to later. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I was hoping to ask a couple of general questions on item 8F. Would that be possible?
Okay, so we'll remove 8F from the consent agenda. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously, which brings us to the open forum. And I understand we have one presenter tonight, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have one presenter, and I'm just confirming here.
Ooh. See, we have Tom.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
He's early though. He's one item ahead of you.
Just 1 second. Oh, sorry, Your Mayor. The person has dropped out of the meeting that was here for the open forum.
Okay, if she comes back, let me know, because that might just be a technical glitch, and
sure.
we'll squeeze her back in.
Thank you, Mayor.
Which brings us to item 6, public hearings. There are none. We have no registered presentations tonight at item 7, which brings us back to item 8A, Air Service Opportunities Fund.
Thank you, Mayor. I will just let all of the attendees in at this time.
Thank you.
What'd you do with Malcolm, Shalane?
Thank you, Worship, through you to CAO. He is in the meeting.
Okay. Tracy.
And we lost Tom too.
I'm just making that work too, Mayor.
Oh, the joys of technology.
We should be almost good to go here now.
Doing great, Shalane. Don't listen to these guys.
Appreciate that. Welcome to the meeting. Yeah. I'll let I think the CFO, Mr. Dollar, is going to introduce, and then we'll let the people joining the meeting make a quick presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions and concerns from members of council. So, Mr. Dollar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to you and members of council. If it's okay with council, I thought, administration could provide some opening comments just to set the context around this item, and then hand it off to Edmonton Global and or EIA representatives for any further comments or presentation they may have, and then open it up for council to ask any questions and engage in any discussion at that point. So with that, before council this evening is a recommendation with regards to the Air Service Opportunities Fund, and that specifically council approve a 3-year commitment totaling $222,500 for the Air Services Opportunity Fund, with the funds being allocated from the Financial Stabilization Reserve. With regards to the fund itself, the Air Services Opportunities Fund is a proposal developed by Edmonton Global and EIA to create a fund of $15 million to provide support and build back previous share of direct flights into EIA. Edmonton Global member municipalities would share the one-time cost of $15 million based on the allocations that have been developed to fund Edmonton Global. And the fund would be established for a 3-year period ending in June 2024, I believe. From a governance standpoint, there's multiple layers of governance to the fund that are being proposed. Starting with the first layer being the Edmonton Global Board, executive leadership, and the program team itself. There's another layer that would involve independent auditors, which would focus on key controls over the fund. And then third and final level would be the Edmonton Global Audit and Finance Committee itself. From a financial perspective, to be very clear, for the City of Beaumont, again, the total commitment being asked for is $222,500. That amount would be provided to Edmonton Global in 3 payments. The first one being somewhat around the end of the month, early part of July, in the amount of just $49,000, I believe, or 44.
Yeah, something like that.
44.5, I believe. Sorry. Then the following payments in years 2 and 3 being $89,000 each. The one thing to point out with regards to the subsequent payments in 2022 and 2023, those payments would be held until agreed upon metrics and targets were achieved. And the last point I'd like to make with regards to the finance is there is a commitment that this amount is the amount that the City of Beaumont would be in for. If other members, and I think we're pretty close to having all members committed, but in the scenario where other members wouldn't be committed, that wouldn't necessarily require a further draw on the City of Beaumont to provide the additional funding to get us to the 15 million. So hopefully that all makes sense and I haven't confused the matter any more than previously. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bruce or any of the other guests who may want to provide some further context or additional information.
I'm happy to do so, Mr. Mayor, and I just want to thank Mike because I might want to take him for the rest of the road shows as we go forward because I thought he did a really bang up job. So thank you very much, Mike. Just to provide,
happy to help.
just wanted to provide a little bit more context in terms of how this all came about. So about 18 months or so ago, the Airport Accord, consisting of Leduc County, EIA, and the City of Edmonton, contacted Edmonton Global and asked them to facilitate a conversation around air services and the importance of air services for the region. And it was very fortuitous because, of course, this is just as COVID impacted and the full weight of COVID and the impact to the air services, particularly for our region, really took hold. That impact continues to this day. And the impact is fairly stark in terms of the number of flights that we used to have versus what we have today. So previously we used to fly to 52 direct destinations. Today we fly to 13. And as you continue to see, while there are opening of the borders that are occurring in terms of not having to quarantine if you're vaccinated and the like, EIA remains constrained by not able to accept or receive any international flights. So those flights are still being flown into Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, and Toronto. And as you also are very appreciative of is that us being the 5th largest economy in Canada, we were the fastest growing airport at the time. This has significant impact on our ability to attract foreign direct investment, because if you can't get here, it's really hard to, as we're a fly-in, fly-out community, as well as for our current businesses, particularly in the export. And while cargo had a pretty good year last year, I would say at 8% growth, when other airports were experiencing significant downturn in their cargo, could you imagine if we would have had passenger traffic, given that over 50% of all cargo that moves, so you think about e-commerce and the like, moves in the belly of passenger planes. So the ongoing constraint has significantly impacted our ability to accelerate through the recovery and into a growth phase. So one of the outcomes of a series of summits that occurred, that the last one culminated on the 3rd of April, was the discussion about how can we prime the pump to get ourselves back into the air services game in a big way once our airport gets reopened. And the idea came about establishing this regional air services fund of approximately, and I'll use Mike's word, it is approximately $15 million. That's our goal, but as you know, that those are numbers that are set, but as things progress, they may ebb or flow a little bit, but that's the intent of the fund. And that $15 million investment really helps set the stage for significant economic growth in the order of, and this is not EIA or Edmonton Global numbers, but these are really global investment firms that do these things and sort of map out what an investment of this nature would mean in real time. So just to add an emphasis to it, it's 7,000 jobs, $415 million of GDP, and $811 million of economic impact of what that $15 million investment brings, because of how those flights actually have ripple effects throughout the whole economy. And as you can also appreciate, given that aircraft are now, or airlines are now planning well out until 2023, that right now Edmonton International Airport is not necessarily a factor in those planning. And this is one way to sort of entice them back in to look at us, because airlines too have reduced their fleets. Something in the neighborhood of 20% of fleets have been reduced globally, and those fleets won't be coming back right away. So we need to make sure that we're being as competitive as possible to ensure that we'll be able to get our best foot forward to get these flights back as quickly as possible. And these flights are not, we're not looking to bring all 52 back with this fund. What we're looking at is really those strategic flights that we believe that really set the conditions to boost recovery and accelerate recovery for the Edmonton metropolitan region. So I just wanted to finish up by saying, because there has been a number of councils that have made considerations. To date, 10 have made decisions. Morinville is also deciding this evening. 9 of the 10 councils that have made decisions have committed to the 3-year fund. St. Albert, being the 10th, has committed to 1 year of funding. And right now we're at approximately $14.7 million raised to date. And that includes Leduc County, who also, recognizing that they benefit more directly, actually contributed $1.5 million in lieu of their $300 and something thousand that would have been their cost share. So I just wanted to end with that note. So things are progressing, and I look forward to taking any questions. And as I always say, if I can't answer them, then all the hard ones go to Tom and his team anyway. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody else from EIA that wanted to weigh in a little bit here before we open it up to questions from members of council?
I think that was a good background, and again with the air summits and other information. So, and I believe councillors are well briefed. So we'll just be glad to take questions. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, so we'll open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor McGoswain.
I'll try to get off mute. Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. I'll start off by sharing. Usually, when I get a request for a decision, these type of documents in front of me, usually my mind is pretty much made up and coming into this conversation, and this one is not. And Malcolm, you've done a good job before of convincing me on a lot of these things. So right now, to share off the top, I'm not quite there, and so I'm waiting to hear some answers today, and looking forward to that discussion. I'll start off at the top. Maybe you could just provide a bit more background. So I get raising, and maybe I should start off. I absolutely recognize the need for this in the region. I've seen the numbers there. Anecdotally, you kind of heard about it, but seeing them in black and white on the paper was really impactful. So I recognize that the need for this broadly. But my more direct questions are that the $15 million, what or up to, or that round number, what are you actually going to be doing with that fund? Maybe just there's a lot of nice words in there, but what are you actually guys going to be doing with that?
So essentially, the fund is meant to help offset startup costs. So, for example, if you look at an airport that already has flights that are going in and out, to add an additional flight for that particular airline is not a major expense. They've got ground crew, they've got the systems in place, they've got all the support mechanisms, so they can layer on additional flights without really an additional cost. To start a flight back up, there's a ton of costs that are associated with that. Now, what this does is allows us to offset a little bit in conjunction with a number of other things that EIA will do as part of the package that helps entice the flight to come back. So the intent is it helps offset startup costs for that airline for the first 3 years, and thereafter the flight then should become sustainable. And one of the key criteria we're looking at before we make any investment is that we need to make sure that we're proving that this flight is sustainable over the long term. And airlines are interested in the same thing. So it's used to offset startup costs to get enticed direct flights back here for the region.
You mind if I keep going here, Your Worship?
Go ahead.
Sorry. So thanks for clarifying that. This sounds a lot like something in the realm that the province and the feds could and should be helping out with. And I know in the briefing note anyway, it identifies that you're potentially looking to work with other orders of government. I find this interesting that with all the pass down costs that the province is already kicking down to municipalities, this seems like another one that the municipalities are having to jump forward here and step up and pay for us. So I'm just curious what the strategy is with the province. Why wasn't the province engaged first and get a yay or nay first before coming to us? I'm just curious around the strategy of that.
So this is not a precedent-setting activity in terms of subsidizing startup costs. We have done so in the past. But more on one-on-one for strategic flights that we think are important for the business community. And it's not supported normally by federal or provincial governments because this is really a regional or municipal requirement to meet their specific needs. So it's basically us taking charge of where we want flights to go and us helping create the conditions to achieve that outcome. So that's why the municipal the municipal involvement. Federally and provincially, we have had a significant advocacy campaign that has been running for, I would say, at least 15 months through a series of programs. So, for example, as you know, I'm the board chair for the Consider Canada City Alliance, which is the 12 largest economic development organizations in Canada that represent 85% of all the foreign direct investment flow into our 12 economies, of which we're number 5. As early as March of 2020, we had a letter signed by all 12 of them indicating that we needed to get our airports back up and running across the country. because there are only 4 currently accepting the international flights, and that remains to this day. So Winnipeg, Halifax, Ottawa still do not have them. So that advocacy call at the federal level continues, and at the provincial level as well. And based on the direction that I had seen, I had received from the trilateral board meeting that we held on the 27th of May, today, a separate letter went to the provincial government asking formally for funding to support this particular fund. But I think we all recognize, and I think the challenge is this would be precedent setting for the provincial and or federal governments to fund, even though it is an unprecedented event with COVID. So we believe that in order to sort of make sure we're charting our own path, that it's best if we can do it at the regional level to get it going because of the urgency needed.
Yeah, I guess I would, and I'm not here to argue with you up to the province, but I would challenge that. I mean, the amount of benefit to the province to have these additional flights come into this region is significant. The flow-on effects, the same that come to us, are equally as beneficial into the province. Or, their argument of they're cash strapped, I'll throw that argument straight back at you, right? So just a comment on that. The last question I have, Mayor, and then I'll pass the mic. The one thing, and this is a strange place for me to come from. I feel as though I'm coming from a protectionist place, and I don't like it, but I've got to ask the question. It feels like to me that municipality is propping up a business, and I get the bigger picture. I understand that. But that's what I can't quite get past that right now. And yes, I recognize it's a not-for-profit and all that sort of stuff, but it feels like to me that we've got this entity that is struggling, and clearly for all the reasons, but locally, we also have several businesses that are struggling as well. If I use a dramatic example, if the Oilers were struggling, they bring a lot of revenue into this region. If the Oilers were struggling, I don't think we would ever consider, participating in that. And I know that's an extreme example, but, looking back more locally, there are many of our local businesses that, $250K from Beaumont over 3 years could really benefit from. And maybe that's just a separate conversation, and maybe we can look at doing both. But that's what I struggle with, the direct benefits with Beaumont. I know we've got a lot of residents here who work at the airport and all that sort of stuff, and I get all that, but that's what I struggle with, it feels as though we're using taxpayer dollars to help prop up the airport in a time of need, when we've got other local businesses here who are also struggling, and we're not giving those same sort of benefits. So I don't know if you've got a comment on that, Malcolm, but that's the struggle that I have right now with this.
I do, and please don't take my last response as anything as letting the provincial government off the hook. So just so you know, we continue to push that particular process, because we agree, we think this is unprecedented, there should be help. But I'm just saying that, quite frankly, we have not had any success in 15 months. And we've had all the mayors sign a letter as well that have gone to the federal government, and that has fallen on deaf ears. So I just think that, our outcomes so far to date have not been as successful as we'd like. Regarding the fund itself and support, so I try and divorce EIA out of the equation, even though they are in the equation, because they're the medium of which the flights come into the region and leave the region. But it's really about access to international markets for businesses. And it's about access to international markets or from international markets for businesses, as well as the visitor economy and the community at large. So it's truly about a bridge or a gateway in and out of our global marketplaces. And right now we don't have that. So I've spoken to 10 CEOs, and I've also been in direct conversation with your executive director of your chamber in terms of the impacts this has on business. And I can tell you that out of those 10 or 12 CEOs that I specifically can refer back to, they've indicated to me that they will leave this region if they can't fly to and from where their markets are. And so it's not just about growth in terms of our business community and growing our prosperity here, because if investors can't fly here, they're not going to invest here. It's also about sustaining what we've got now in terms of making sure that our business communities are able to move the products, the people, their services to places they need to go. And right now, because not a lot of people are flying, it hasn't had a significant impact on everybody, but it's going to once these airports start to open up and we can't get to where we need to go.
And maybe I can follow up on that a little bit. All good questions. Is really our airport here is here for the community. We're proud of the jobs that were created prior to COVID. COVID certainly it's none of our faults. It's not our city or airport or anything. We're proud of how we're operating through COVID, and we've unfortunately had to permanently reduce 30% of our workforce. We've taken our capital budget from 103 million to 25 million. We've reduced our operating expenses by 50 million, and our concern is more for making sure that we get these flights back soon. The airlines have there's a whole bunch of planes that are on the ground that aren't flying, and the airlines are going to be making decisions soon on where those flights come back. And we know the importance of these flights to the business community, to each of you. And I appreciate, Councillor, you noting that even the direct impact, you can see the benefit to the community of people that are working at the airport and they're paying taxes in your community. There's tons of indirect impact, the e-commerce growth that we've had, access to markets for people in your community and throughout the region that are now able to access international markets for their products. So what we're really trying to do is this unprecedented COVID event is jumpstart these flights back so that we can actually create more economic impact in your community and other communities. So I just wanted to kind of chat about that. It's really a benefit. Business community benefits. The airlines. One of the great things about this fund is the airlines. It will resonate with them that our municipalities are rallying around this and understanding how important these air pipelines are for our region.
I appreciate those comments for sure, and absolutely aware of the problem and the effort that the airport has done to adjust to this. I don't envy the problem at all. I just that is the challenge for me. Is this is it's tough to as a municipality when we've got all the other challenges that everyone else is facing to then add this one to it. So I really appreciate your comments. I'll leave the floor there for my other councillors to weigh in, but very good answers to my questions. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Margo Swain. I know for myself, I'm supportive of this Air Opportunities Fund. I think that a strong international airport, which we're not international right now, the flights are still, as far as I know, coming into those four international cities. And if we can't get those international flights, that's going to have a direct bearing not only on the residents of Beaumont that live here and work at EIA, but it's going to have a direct impact on our long-term economic development goals. We're starting the Beaumont Innovation Park. If we can't get executives and companies that are going to fly indirect and they have to hub out of Calgary, they're not going to come to Calgary. They're going to go to areas in and around Calgary. We are going to lose so much momentum. It is not going to be good. And right now, there is a very real danger that the Edmonton International Airport is going to be a hub airport. It's not going to be international anymore. We're going to have to hub out of Calgary. We're going to have to hub out of Vancouver. We're going to have to hub. So I'm as much as I take your point that there's lots of pressures, I think this is one of the ones that we have to step up as a municipality and join the rest of the communities in the region and do that and help out the EIA. And they're not asking for a lot of money. I think we need to look after our own economic development futures and support the EIA, because the airport is going to be a key driver for Beaumont because of the track we're headed down. So that's where I'm sort of sitting. So we will go with Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. I think my question was addressed partly by Mr. Dowler in his preamble there, but I just wanted to confirm this. In the event, I assume the municipalities involved are all the 13 municipalities of Edmonton Global. Is that correct?
There's actually 14 because Gibbons is part of this, so they're going to a vote tomorrow. Gibbons.
Okay, thank you. sorry, I missed one. My question was really, in the eventuality that one or more of them decides that they don't want to do this, does that mean then that you make do with less than the 15 million, or do the municipalities that do want to contribute have an increased demand to make up the shortfall?
So the way the governance and accountability report is written now, and just so Councillor, you're aware, I've actually just provided it to all the CAOs, so they haven't fully absorbed it all. They were part of the authors in terms of driving it forward, but I just got out the final copy. And in there, it is a public document, so it is about process, so it can be shared publicly. And what it indicates is that there will be no additional contributions other than those that we're asking for based on your share contribution. But we also acknowledge, though, that there are municipalities that may wish to contribute more. So you will not contribute any addition to what we're asking of you. And if the fund has to be less than 15 million because of that, then it will be less than 15 million. But as I indicated, I think at the front end, we're at about $14.7 million because of the commitments to date. So we're getting very close to that magic number.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to our presenters. I appreciate your presentation this evening and the answers you've been given to Councillor Markoff-Swain's questions and also Councillor Stout's questions. I guess this council has done a very good job being a regional partner to our many initiatives and plans we've gotten in space, especially the Transit Commission. We're a big supporter of the Transit Commission. There's a palatable and direct benefit to Beaumont being part of the Transit Commission, for example, an example of regionalization. I know you probably can't give me an answer. I know, Malcolm, from your comments and Mr. Ruth, also your comments, but, you know, from this fund, can you give me any idea what the direct benefits to Beaumont may be? As we are a custodian of Beaumont tax dollars, we have to sort of, you know, justify what we're doing for our taxpayers and doing things. So I'm having a little trouble getting there myself as to, I understand the regionalization and all those arguments given so far. I understand that completely, but I'm also leaning towards feeling uncomfortable promoting tax dollars from Beaumont to an initiative that has really difficult ways to connect benefits of Beaumont in a direct basis, such as the Transit Commission, which is a very direct way of benefiting Beaumont. So help me get there, if you could, with how it could directly or indirectly benefit Beaumont, more so than you already, actually more directly than indirectly. How would directly benefit Beaumont, please, as best you can? Thank you.
So first of all, Councillor, we completely agree. We think you are a tremendous regional partner. And on this decision, it's one initiative, right? So I think we need to keep it all in perspective that regardless of the council's decision tonight, you're still a tremendous regional player. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that this is why the direction was to set it up by individual councils deciding what made best sense for them, so that we could achieve the outcomes we are looking for. So if a council decides that they are not able to support this particular initiative, then we respect that fully. And we also respect your ongoing work in the regional forum. But in terms of direct benefits, there's really three groups that I would say that we look at. One is business, one is visitor economy, and one is the community writ large. So if you think about your citizens and you think about the businesses that are in, I mean, if there is an exporter in your company or in your community, if there's an importer in your community, more than likely they'll have some connection to the air bridge that is provided there. I just think about Amazon or Shopify or any of those products that are currently being used that people take advantage of. More than likely, most of that comes in via the airport or in the bellies of cargo planes and the like. The other thing is with regards to the visitor economy. So if you took 1,000 international passengers that come into this region, approximately 7 out of every 10 are visitor economy passengers. And 10% of the regional economy is tied directly to the visitor economy. So your restaurants, your bars, your hotels, anybody that's in that has a direct benefit from the visitor economy. I think about your great restaurant scene, which I take part of every time I get to come down and visit. And these are the kind of things that benefit from those that come by. I mean, you offer a certain milieu in your community with the French background that really resonates with people that go out there and have a look. So in terms of the visitor economy, it's also an important attribute. And finally, your community at large. Many of your citizens of your community will use the airlines, in particular when they travel, family unification or whatever. So there's a series of what I would call direct benefits to your individual ratepayers that are benefiting from have access to the 52 flights prior to COVID. And I think will also continue to benefit if we can accelerate them back pre-COVID. Last night, I was speaking to one young lady, and I think you might have seen her on Global Edmonton, where she indicated she's driving to Calgary to catch a flight because she can't get one to Nashville via Edmonton unless she goes through multiple stops. So it was just easier to drive to Calgary. And really, that's what we're trying to prevent, is that we want to make sure that the individual citizens of our communities are able to access the locations they want to fly to and from without having to be inconvenienced by driving to Calgary or elsewhere to get that flight connection.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. I am still struggling a little bit because I understand where you're coming from totally. It just feels like we're subsidizing a business basically, and that's kind of what we're doing for all the right reasons in the regionalization, the economic development reasons. At the same time, we could be subsidizing, if you will, to use that term loosely, our local businesses that we have direct control over, influence over. So I'm just struggling trying to get to my head to that spot about of the grant that we're being asked to produce. So I'll yield the floor now, Mr. Mayor Stewart, and I may ask a question later on, depending upon how the conversation goes. Thank you.
No, fair enough. I understand where you're coming from, Councillor. Once again, though, sometimes I understand we're wanting to be looking after Beaumont, but sometimes when you're regional, you might not get as direct as you can. But if you're looking for direct, we have hundreds of home-based businesses that are getting their product through EIA. They're sending it out, bringing it in, and this EIA not running properly is directly going to affect those businesses that are based right here in our city. So if you're looking for something direct, that's direct.
I definitely appreciate that. I'm just working through my head how to get there. So I'm listening to the conversation. Thank you.
If I may just offer two examples. Sure. One is florists. So the KLM flight that was in and out of Amsterdam, as you know, Amsterdam is the hub globally for the floral market. And if you ever get a chance to go to Amsterdam and go see their airport, in the morning, there are millions and millions of dollars worth of flowers that fly in there. And then they're packaged up and put on planes to fly all over the world. And our florists here in Edmonton depend on that flight to get their flowers. So there's a florist in your neighborhood that does that. And the other one is travel agents. And without the connectedness, people aren't going to be using the travel agents to get them to where they need to be. And so when we were chatting with travel agencies, the local ones, they're very concerned that their business will dry up if they can't provide the service that people are looking for from here. So there's two sort of, I would say, tangible examples of businesses that will have some challenges if we can't get these flights back.
And I might add that this isn't funds to operate the airport. We've done the difficult task of making sure that we can run the airport, and we're proud of how we've been able to do that. This is really to create business growth and to re-stimulate businesses. If I look at your innovation park and people coming into the innovation park, one of the biggest first items that people are going to be looking at to come into that is air access for people coming in from other areas. And what we're wanting to do is actually stimulate those jobs or re-stimulate those jobs coming back. And those people and those people that are in Beaumont are going to be using those jobs. Not only they'll be using those jobs to create more tax base in the community as well. So that's where when Malcolm first talked about the economic impact. I wish it was easier to show you. These aren't our figures. These are figures from experts in the field in terms of the economic stimulation. But again, just this is really for the region. It's not for operating the airport.
Councillor Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the presenters and to my colleagues, because I'm pretty sure all my questions have been asked and answered in numerous ways. Just to say, I can't see how we could survive economically without that international airport. It's been devastating, I think, to just see how it's been impacted, but so many places they've been impacted, so we're not alone in that. But I really do feel that this is an important piece. And considering the ask, I think we're getting quite a bit for the amount of money you're asking us for. So I am in favor. I was skeptical coming in. Again, the questions that have been asked have helped me to solidify what I consider to be the positives. And I think the most compelling argument that I can think of is that this is our air link to the rest of the world. And it's a small example, but for me to visit my family in upstate New York, I have to drive to Calgary. I can't, the cost is just prohibitive to go any other way. That's a small example. That's a personal example. I know just from people that I know that are in the businesses of using the airport for the materials that come in and for the materials that go out, the goods that go out, it would be devastating. And I could see us losing many of our residents and many of our businesses if we don't get on board and work together. We said when we were going to be collaborative as a region that there would be times when we can't see the direct benefit coming back to us. Actually, I can see it in this case, and I think the amount of money we're being asked for is well worth it. So I am supporting this 100%.
Councillor Van Newkirk. Thank you, Kathy, for your comments. Appreciate them.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. And Mr. Bruce, Mr. Ruth, thanks for your comments to date here this evening. I want to circle back to the provincial advocacy side of things. Mr. Bruce, have you been able to have a direct conversation with our MLA? And if so, what is he doing to advocate to get some funding for this initiative?
So I have not personally spoken to your MLA. What I've done is I've used Minister Madu, who is a cabinet minister, and the what I saw on the inside of this. I've also spoken to the Minister of JEI. I've spoken to the Minister of Agriculture. I've spoken to a number of the deputy ministers, and then you will see probably tomorrow a copy of the letter that has gone to the Premier. It speaks directly from our board chair. And it's really about two things. One is support to the fund itself, but also the other one is the support to getting us back open. So we continue to not have the full set of criteria in front of us to be able to open up, to find out when we're going to open the airport. So I have not spoken directly to your MLA, but I have spoken to a number of the key cabinet ministers in the government to help us get there.
Yeah, no, and that's a good start. Are you finding support there?
I'm going to be pretty frank about that. We haven't seen the kind of support given the hard 15 months that we've been doing at this. So we continue to outreach and reach in, because it's as you've indicated, we're the 5th largest economy in Canada. We service the northern half of Alberta and the territories. This is critically important to Alberta as a whole. And I will say we have not had the same level of support that we would have hoped for, with emphasis on fair treatment, or equitable treatment is probably a better word, in terms of our positioning for economic development.
Okay, well, that's good. No, I look forward to seeing some more on that advocacy. And, one of the things that I may suggest on the advocacy front is getting more creative and looking a little more broadly at some of the different avenues of media, both traditional and non-traditional media support that you might be able to gain in the region, as well as engaging the opposition. I think that the more conversation that can get going on this issue to try and get this for EIA, the better. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Van Newkirk. And before we go off and start on round 2, is there anybody that hasn't spoken yet that wants to speak in round 1? Okay, seeing none, we'll close off round 1. Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be brief. Sorry, I start off by saying I was on the fence heading into this, but maybe I'll acknowledge Mr. Bruce up front, your comments. I've always had a lot of time and respect for you and your argument and your background, and really appreciate your answers today. Mr. Ruth, when you explained and you put it so eloquently around the fact that this is not going to your OPEX. This is, you guys have made those tough, the airport has made those tough decisions itself. And this is more the broader piece that really summed it up for me. And also, Mayor Stewart, your passionate argument there was very, very well said. So I'm in favor of this. I think when I'm questioning myself, I looked at this and this makes sense, and I'm trying to figure out why isn't this a slam dunk for me? And I think that the challenge that I have is not with this presentation, not with this approach. I think just for a change, it's at that provincial level that there isn't that support, and that's unfair. And I don't want to penalize the process here. So I am in favor of this. I will be voting for it. I do think, I don't like the model of St. Albert where they're giving 1 year in and dribbling that funding in. I think if we're going to do it, we're in, and we're going to give it a predictability. So I'll be supporting the motion in front of us, and just want to thank everyone for a really good conversation on this topic. So thanks for everyone's time coming in and giving some good answers on this.
Appreciate that. So at this point, I guess I'll put the motion on the floor. To move this along, I'll move that council approve a one-time increase in expenditures to the 2021 operating budget in the amount of $222,500 for the Air Service Opportunities Fund, with the funding coming from the Financial Stabilization Reserve. Further comments? I saw Councillor Danlock, your hand went up and down. Again, you speaking?
Well, I went down when you made the motion, so I'm going to let you do the motion first. I took my hand down. So now the motion on the floor, I'll put my hand back up again. And I also want to thank the presenters for their comments. My initial thoughts were, why are we doing the job of the province and using Beaumont tax dollar to do the job of the province? That's where I was kind of coming from initially. That's why I asked the questions the way I did. I'm very happy with the response from Mr. Bruce and Mr. Ruth also on the comments and the question. I'm all for regionalization, as this council has been since we began our term 4 years ago. I see the benefits to Beaumont regionally. I had to ask this question to get myself the justification to vote yes on this motion, and I believe I'm there. I have enough confidence now in the spin-off benefits for Beaumont to support this motion, and I'll vote accordingly when the motion is called for. Thank you very much, gentlemen and council, for your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danlock. Appreciate your comments. Councillor Hendricks, and if anybody else is wanting to speak in this last round, get your hands up now. Otherwise, after Councillor Hendricks is finished, we're going to call the question.
Your worship, thank you. And again, to the regional point, go back a few years when the expansion was first being contemplated. I was chair of the Southwest Regional Water Commission, and we certainly stepped up with our water service systems to improve and help out the EIA. And then you've got the Port Alberta discussions. You've got all the air cargo discussions. You've got I believe there's a tank farm that's currently being constructed, to assist with fuel. It goes on. And what would you do without the airport regionally? And if you take the model, and you mentioned Schiphol in Amsterdam, that's the only airport they've got. So for those who've been to Nijmegen and need to get on a train and another train and other things to get to the airport, you got half your day is spent getting to the airport if you're on the other side of Holland. So we've got a great system here. We've got a great opportunity here. We had great momentum here. So COVID got in the way. We got to restart this. So I'm all in favor of putting some energy back into this whole process. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. Appreciate your comments. Councillor Barnhart, to wrap it up, then we'll call the question.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one remaining question, and it is for Mr. Dowling regarding the source of funding. And I wonder if he could explain why the financial municipal reserve instead of the economic development reserve.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Barnhart. And in a lot of ways, it could have made the argument for the Economic Development Fund. When I did go back and look at the council reserve policy, though, with regards to that fund in particular, it did have more of a focus on capital. And so specifically, one example of that would be land purchases. And so this is not necessarily in line with a capital ask. This is more of a grant, one-time operating expense for the organization, which felt at that time a little bit more in line with the financial stabilization reserve itself.
Thank you for that, but there's nothing stopping it from coming from the other? You're saying it wasn't the original thought to have it to come from the economic development, but it could?
It could. At any point in time, council is able to make a decision that's not necessarily in line with the policies that have been approved. And so that is up to council's purview to direct administration to take it from that fund. As I said, I didn't necessarily see that would be the most appropriate use of those dollars versus the financial stabilization reserve.
The only reason I'm thinking it might be is that in future years, that reserve is what we use to keep the tax rate from going too high, whereas the economic development reserve is specifically for this purpose, economic development.
And yeah. Fair comment. What I would suggest, though, is going forward, the financial stabilization reserve isn't necessarily there or put in place to impact future tax rate increases. It's really there in scenarios where an easy example is if we have an extraordinary snowfall and we need to go over our budget in a particular year to take care of that snow. The financial stabilization reserve is there to fund those additional expenditures that we would incur in that scenario. So when you get into impacting tax rates or tax increases, there's different mechanisms that administration would look at employing to deal with that rather than a reserve, which is there for a one-time kind of event, such as we have here.
Would it be possible, last question, would it be possible if we find out that this was not the best place to get the money from, that this council or next council could move the money from another reserve to pay for it? I don't want to hold up the vote. I don't want to vote against it, but I just wonder if that can be changed at a later date, if necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Either through council directing administration or the administration bringing forward to council an alternative, either through the year-end process or really at any council meeting, there would be that opportunity to basically swap funds from one reserve to the other.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments and the conversation tonight. Lots of hard questions were asked of our presenters, and I really appreciate the answers. And I really appreciate you being here tonight. And without further ado, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? And that carries unanimously. Appreciate council's confidence in getting EIA back up and running to its full potential. And once again, I thank the presenters for coming in tonight and answering the tough questions. And I know you guys have been on the whirlwind tour and you're getting to the end of it, a couple more to go, but we really do appreciate all the work you're doing, both at Edmonton Global and at EIA, to try and get our economy running again. So thank you very much, and appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you as always, council. Always appreciate the engagements. I most enjoy it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, so without further ado, that brings us to item 8B, Social Master Plan Progress Review. Ms. Willison, welcome to council.
Thank you, your mayor and members of council. So I'm pleased to be here this evening with Emily Sangster, who is our long-range planner. And we're here to provide you with a progress review on the Social Master Plan. And in addition to that, to update you on how we're striving to be equitable, diverse and inclusive throughout the entire organisation, including in the way that FCSS delivers its programmes and services within the community. So administration's recommendation is that council receive the Social Master Plan Progress Review for information. So just to quickly go over a little bit of background to bring everybody up to speed. So our inclusivity social master plan was approved by council back in June of 2019. Its mission was to basically to enhance well-being of Beaumont residents through compassion, inclusion, and resiliency. And as part of that, in October 2019, FCSS retained Urban Matters, who helped us develop the initial master plan, to work with us on an implementation report. The goal was that we were going to bring that back to council in October of last year. However, COVID derailed that plan. But this implementation primer consisted of meetings with each municipal department to introduce the social master plan and discuss opportunities and look at how each department and service area could certainly support those goals of the social master plan. So fast forward to March of this year, there was the council had directed administration to also report on the progress that we've made in striving to achieve inclusion and diversity in our city. And administration felt that this could be partially achieved through the social master plan review. So in spring of this year, long range planner Emily Sangster and myself met with each director to review the implementation primer and to gather information and look at any progress that had occurred. The review, as I've said, was twofold because it touched on how and if departments and service areas had identified steps and made any progress in regards to inclusion and diversity. And we found that despite the disruptions of COVID, progress had actually been made on many levels to support the equity, diversity, and inclusion. So as council, in the report that was provided to you, there was an appendix that details the progress made by each department. I'm not going to go through that step-by-step review tonight. That is a lot of information. So what I thought I would do is I would just highlight some of the outcomes, achievements from each of the municipal departments and service areas. So I'm going to start first with FCSS. So I think of note is the fact that during this time, the organization joined the Intercity Forum on Social Policy. And in doing so, this has actually provided numerous opportunities for the organization through FCSS and a member of council to tackle those bigger systems issues as they relate to social well-being and health, which obviously includes some of those bigger issues such as equity and diversity, some of the bigger issues, Indigenous, multicultural issues. So that has certainly provided us with a significant opportunity on a regional and a provincial level. Also of note is the Action for Happiness movement. We became the first chapter in Canada. This movement certainly raises the importance and the profile of positive mental health and well-being in the community, which we know now as a result of COVID, this is even more important than ever. One of the other initiatives, certainly through FCSS, is in striving to be inclusive and equitable. We developed a partnership with the library called Tech2Go, which we will be launching potentially in July. This program will give residents access to technology. And so these are the residents that traditionally don't have access to internet. Maybe they don't have access to computers. And we all know with the library being closed, that presented some challenges. And so this partnership allows individuals to loan out the computer, the hotspot, so that they can do what they need to do. Maybe it's job searches, maybe it's resume development, maybe it's just connecting during these times of isolation. So we think that really demonstrates how, for inclusivity and equity, we can make sure that all of our residents have access to this technology. We've also really worked to develop relationships with our Indigenous and multicultural communities. As you're aware, we very much promote Orange Shirt Day in the organization and across the community. We have hosted blanket exercises, which some council participated in. We've had various celebrations, such as Métis Day celebrations. And also FCSS works on an internal working group and also a regional municipal equity, diversity and inclusion team. We're also working with HR internally on EDI initiatives, so that there is certainly considerable work that is taking place within FCSS. But we do know there is more work that needs to be done. We need to be more intentional. But again, it's capacity. So it's our capacity to be able to provide the Indigenous multicultural services that we feel that our community needs. So I'll briefly touch on some of the other department areas and what they are doing. But before I get to them, I would like to note that we do have the Beaumont Interagency Group. So this is an essential group of service providers. So they're from housing, education, health, social services, and they too are extremely conscious of equity and inclusion. They undertake numerous initiatives to better serve clients by being culturally sensitive, in the way that they use inclusive language, being trauma-informed, etc. So that is happening certainly on a broader level within our community. Taking a look at some of the work of the internal departments, communications and marketing, they have an assignment of a specific staff to FCSS, which has created an increased understanding of the role of FCSS in the community, so that we can better target our promotion, we can create awareness. And we're also exploring opportunities for translation supports, written supports. So that is something that we are looking at for the future. Community services, certainly FCSS aligns fairly closely with. They're in the process of recruiting a culture team lead. This is a new position, and it's a first step towards programming that will involve Indigenous and multicultural communities and activities. They also support inclusion through the myriad of programs that our recreation department provides. They also have the recreation subsidy program, and FCSS works in collaboration to determine eligibility for the recreation subsidy program. And we also have been working fairly closely with them to identify multicultural / gathering drop-in spaces at the BSRC. Obviously, COVID has sort of put a bit of a kink in that, but that's something that certainly this fall, we're going to look at those opportunities as we move forward. Our colleagues in economic development, they've talked to us about identifying opportunities for location of immigrant support services and having them located in Beaumont. So that's something that we're certainly interested in taking a look at what that might look like. The Human Resources Department, obviously their focus is more internal, and they're looking at an equitable and inclusive workplace for city employees and looking at employment strategies to attract marginalized groups. So like I said, they're more internally focused. Our operations department, they support equity and inclusion through things like accessible playgrounds, such as the replacement that's going to be going into the Four Seasons Park. They're looking at accessibility audits and assessments of municipal spaces and buildings that will be completed in 2022. And then, of course, transit is another big one. So there have definitely been conversations between FCSS and that department to look at low-cost transit fares for youth, low-income residents, etc. So those conversations are certainly ongoing, and with the regional effort and fair integration, we believe that that's a very, very important thing for our community. Planning and development really are working very closely with us. As I've mentioned, long-range plan, long-range planner Emily Sangster has been a huge support to the organization and to FCSS in forwarding the social master plan priorities. Emily and I brought forward the affordable housing strategy, the committee of the whole last week. That will be coming back to you again. There's also the age-friendly initiative. So these collaborations between FCSS and planning and development are absolutely instrumental in moving some of these recommendations forward. And as we know, land development plays an important role, again, with equity and inclusion in neighborhood design. And there has been a very positive strategy in the planning department, creating internal processes that have allowed for input from all departments, which is so valuable because this ensures that when we plan for new developments as an organization, affordable housing options and the related infrastructure that goes along with that to support that are being considered in these decisions and strategies. We look at our colleagues in protective services, community policing, we all know is critical in building some of these relationships. The RCMP work very closely with the youth centre, they work with the seniors, they do the coffee with the seniors, coffee with a cop. And then when we look at municipal enforcement, so we have the school resource officer, again, work closely with FCSS. They are building those relationships. Certainly inclusivity is really important to them. And finally, I guess when we look at the fire department are involved in numerous community events, and they're certainly involved in FCSS events. They're doing the fire safety promotion and annual campaigns. And so they very much have a presence in the community. I would say to you that certainly in meeting with our colleagues in the rest of the organization, even despite COVID and sometimes limited resources because of other priorities, certainly it's been pretty impressive that some of these recommendations, not only from the social master plan, such as the affordable housing, age-friendly, have certainly been furthered. There's also been strides taken towards equity, diversity, and inclusion in all departments. FCSS's plan is to continue working with all of the departments to ensure that these goals are being met. And also, I think, to be more intentional on how we incorporate equity, diversity, and inclusion in all service areas within the organisation. I mean, I guess in concluding, we understand that the knowledge mobilisation is essential, and certainly the importance of holding space in working with our multicultural and Indigenous populations. And also that means taking steps to further the actions identified also in the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action report. And to do that, we need to work in partnership, not only with our service areas and departments internally, but we need to engage with our Indigenous peoples and our community and our region. So that is certainly something that we recognise, we are working towards. And I guess I'll conclude it there. I don't want to take up too much time. I'll conclude it there. And certainly myself, Emily is on the Zoom tonight. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that certainly any of council have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. Appreciate that. Just before we open up discussion, I'll look for a member of council to move the motion, and then we'll open up discussion. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Wilson. I will most gladly make the motion to approve this. Receive the Social Master Plan Progress Review Report as an attachment 1 as information.
And I'll give you the opportunity to have first comment or question if you want it.
Thank you very much. I think all of council knows that I've been chomping at the bit, wanting to see how things were going with the social master plan. And I think it was brilliant of the administration to take my notice of motion that I put forward around diversity and inclusion and bring it forward, because this definitely does answer many of my questions and the issues that I know we do need to deal with in our community. Ms. Williston, you've said it before, and you've been very polite about it. Capacity is a very difficult thing to deal with when you are a relatively close-knit. I don't want to say small, because you're mighty in terms of your staff complement, but like how many staff do you have now? And I understand this is more of a corporate focus, really, because you're taking all of the departments, into the collaboration. Like, what do you think it would take to actually get all of this done? How many years are we looking at? Is this a 5-year plan? Is it a 10-year plan? A little bit on that, please. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Barnhart. To address your first question, how many staff do we have? It's myself and 3 social workers. So we have youth, child and families, and we have senior/community development. So I will agree with you, we're small and mighty, but there's limited capacity. There's limited capacity. We certainly are trying to do the best that we can, and I think I've attempted to demonstrate that through tonight's presentation and that report. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the capacity, we can't move some of this further along. And that is just the reality, and that's where we're at right now. So EDI is reflected in our values and our beliefs in FCSS, but there is so much work to be done that at current capacity, we are struggling to keep up. That is the bottom line here.
If I could just give you a couple of thoughts that are coming to me as you're saying that. If I'm not mistaken, when we did the plan and it was approved, you had identified priorities and high, medium, and low. I might be mixing that up with another plan, but I think you did that. And I would say prioritization, when and if you come back in June of 2022 to the next council, I do think that they are going to need to know what is the most important pieces and what is doable. But I also believe you should ask for more capacity in the organization to do it. And I guess the last thing I'll say, and then I'll let my colleagues ask questions, is that collaboration is the other, I think, major piece that will help. And you seem to be right on that in terms of working with the agencies in the community, the nonprofits, the businesses, economic development. It is all tied together. And I think that is the way we succeed. And by making people aware of how important all of these issues really are, not only for the people themselves, but for our whole community, regardless of who it is. So we have a healthy community, a vibrant community. We need to keep it that way. And it's these kinds of actions that'll do that. So anyway, I'm a fan, so I will stop at that and let others weigh in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I apologize about that. Thank you very much, Councillor Barnhart. Appreciate your comment and your passion for this topic. We will have Councillor Monkhouse-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
I think Councillor Van Newkirk beat me to the punch by mere seconds. I don't know. I usually go first. Steve, did you want to go?
It doesn't matter.
Whatever you want to, however you want to go, guys. You popped up like almost simultaneously, so.
Right, Sam's pointing at me, so off I go. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for the presentation. Lots to read and lots to unpack with this one. So, I think an update is warranted because look how much information is there and look at all the things to do. 2 major themes. First one will be capacity and resources, and the second one will be communications and marketing. Capacity and resources. I want to be very, very simple, short, and to the point. If you need something, ask for it and fight for it. I can't say that anymore directly. I don't believe that we had a discussion at budget time around, your team asking for more support. So, we didn't have that discussion. I wish we would have, and I think that the continual "we need more support and we need more resources" drum that you're banging, I hear it wholeheartedly, and I can't wait to see that ask of the next council in the next budget. So I'll stop there on that. Please and thank you. So it's very important. I was very encouraged to see the culture team lead position go forward. I think that's a great start. So well done on that. And I hope you find a real good person to do that. So just for clarity, will that add a fourth person, a Kim and 4? Is that what that would do?
Your worship, through to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Actually, that doesn't add a position to my department. That position is in the Community Services Department. Okay. So under Mr. Suter's department. So while it's very welcome, and certainly we have had many, many discussions about that position, much needed position, it's not in the FCSS department, though.
Perfect. Great job working with your peers to get support across multiple budget lines. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Switching over to communications and marketing. I've spoken a few times about the need and desire to better tell the FCSS social services aspect and angle of the important work that's done in the community. The one piece that I saw in here was the reference to I think it was the business partner model. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. In the document, there's a couple sentences around, it's helping do this, this, and this because, but I'm just wondering if you can speak to that business partner model a little bit more, just to better inform me and us on that. Thank you.
Okay, so what is happening is that we have assigned to us a communications representative, and we are currently working with that individual on creating I would say, an awareness strategy. I'm going to call it an awareness strategy. In fact, I looked at the draft document just last week. So we're going through and we are tweaking that so that we can basically put a campaign forward to do exactly as you suggested. It's creating that awareness of the social supports, programs, services that are currently offered, and the plans as the affordable housing, age friendly, that we are continuing to develop as we move forward. So we need to be articulating to the community how we are doing these things, and we need to be making the community aware that things are happening, progress is being made, because traditionally we are not doing a good job with that. But working with our other colleagues in our other departments certainly will be able to provide us some leverage to be able to do that. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but
yeah, I think it gets there. It feels like it's kind of a new initiative and a new connection there. So I think that you're going down a good path with that, because like I said before, my overall concern is that the good work is like flying under the radar in the community. Those who are receiving the service and getting good results from the service know all about it. But if you go to the side of a soccer field on a Monday night and ask people about it, the awareness is low. And anything we can do to turn the dial on that, Beaumont supports. I look at small initiatives like the Karma Pantry in Saunterville Park. And that the more awareness that got, that poor pantry needs to be twice the size now because people are filling it, right? So I think Beaumont has more and is willing to do more, and the more we can raise awareness, I think the more you'll find in the community. So that's that on that point. But keeping in on the communications and marketing front, but switching gears to engaging youth, specifically page A15, page 37 of 88. Basically, that's the communication and marketing. It says potential action implementation piece. And I just wanted to, I guess, offer a little bit more in there, just because this is the time when we can offer, I suppose. And we often talk about engaging with youth in Beaumont, and we focus on the youth center, and it's a great resource to the community, and I wish it was 4 times as big and had 4 times as many active members. But still, even if it was 4 times as big and had 4 times as active members, it is but a snippet of the youth in the community. And one of the things that I was thinking about is I was like, how can we do more and reach more? And the sport component of Beaumont cannot be understated. And at what point, in community messaging, does FCSS, begin to leverage the sport activities in Beaumont to share messaging? And I'll probably bring this up in other communications portions of what we do in the community, because there are large groups of people who are coming together, and youth are doing things, and it can't be our personal mailing list. I understand that. But if you take a go where the people go model, and if you had a message to deliver or something to educate the community on, what better thing to do than a pop-up booth at the BSRC, or head out for an hour on a busy soccer field day or a busy baseball diamond. We went and watched some friends, kids play baseball as we did a bike ride, and there's all kinds of people there milling about, and I'm sure they would have time for some sort of messaging, right? So anyways, that's it for me on that piece. I think you understand what I'm trying to say there, is that the youth center, yes, that's a way to catch the youth and get some messaging out there, but there's some other potential untapped avenues to communicate or educate or get feedback or engage with youth through other sporting events in the community. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That great ideas, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. That's a really good idea. And I think the FCSS philosophy is we meet people where they're at. And so meeting people both figuratively and literally. So those ideas are certainly ideas that we will welcome, and I will certainly take back to the team. And thank you for those.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Appreciate your comments, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Really appreciate them. Ms. Williston, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to echo a little bit that it was a really well-written report with lots of information, and we're headed in some really great directions, and I really do appreciate the comprehensiveness of the information that we've been given. Just a quick reminder to Council, we've had 2 people hit on resourcing tonight, so I think we've whipped that horse to death. Just trying to move this along. So next we'll have Councillor Monkhouse-Swain, followed by Councillor Danlock, followed by Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. First, just appreciation to Councillor Barnhart for continuing to raise and push this. So thanks for your leadership on this, as always. I won't dive into some of those other comments as per the Mayor's direction, but good noted. I'll come at the truth and reconciliation angle just from an Indigenous perspective. No shocker here. And I found a little nugget on page 20, Ms. Williston, where it says that there is an opportunity for a council to provide additional direction on their priorities in this area. So I will absolutely take you at that offer. I don't usually get that offer, so I'll weigh in here. I'll be brief, but I think the biggest picture, and that's in the human resources section. So I'll ask one question, then I've got more, just some comments, just around Indigenous awareness training. So you mentioned some of the exercises and all that sort of stuff, but is there anything that we do formally as the city, whether it's mandatory or what do we do to promote that Indigenous awareness piece for our city staff as well as council?
Okay, Your Worship, through to Councillor Monkhouse-Swain. There is nothing that we are actually doing formally as training. Those discussions have certainly started internally with our HR department about opportunities for training. FCSS receives more of those opportunities. We're registered social workers, so we do get access to training opportunities. Some of those I have certainly shared with our Human Resources Department, because I think it's critical that we are working on this internally. We have to work on this as an organization. We're obligated to work on it, and it's the right thing to be doing. So that is certainly through our new business training platform. That is certainly something that there will be training opportunities for staff. Some may be mandatory, some may be not, depending on the area that you work in. But absolutely, that's critical. So that those conversations are happening. And so, can I say that we've done anything to date? No, not across the organization, but as individual departments, there are very much pockets of service areas that are doing training in this specific area.
Okay, thank you. So you asked for some suggestions. I'll give you one. I absolutely think it should be mandatory, right, from Mike down to our Parks Department to take this training. There are many ways to be able to do this, and I could give you a list of them, and I'm sure you have access to them as well. To have this online training, that first step. I know about a not-for-profit Indigenous group out of Manitoba that does this externally, and just for a small service fee. No reason why the X amount of city staff couldn't just take that one hour course online and just get that initial base, right? Like a lot of conversations around residential schools and all that sort of stuff, for obvious reasons. But something as simple as that, having that mandatory for all city staff is an inexpensive way. It increases the city's Indigenous spend, which is should be a priority for us, and gets that initial conversation going. So I'll leave that there, but that's a simple thing that everyone could do online. Give staff a month or so to be able to complete it within their day. So that's the suggestion there. I do want to quickly touch on you list out a lot of great things that we have done. The Indigenous events, the flag raising ceremonies, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm super proud of where we've come on this front. I remember, when it was my turn to be deputy mayor and I was chairing these meetings, and I started off these meetings with that land acknowledgement. I've got a lot of questions from people about why we do this, what does this mean, all that sort of stuff. And to see it here being so, readily adopted, and now it's second nature like that, that is very, very rewarding for the city, and the amount of Indigenous people who just come up and just say, hey, look, I was going by the library and I saw the Métis flag or the Treaty 6 flag. That means a lot. So the city has come a long way. But that Indigenous awareness training, one of the things that really stresses is the land acknowledgement. These are nice things, and I'm not being critical, but we've got to take that additional step. My concern is that without that deeper history, that understanding, and that's hard to get to. Without that, sometimes it feels as though we're checking a box. We're reading the land acknowledgement piece just to do it because someone says that we should do it. And I'd really like us to be in a spot where, whether it's council and a senior administration, where we actually understand the history of Indigenous peoples here in and around our area. I've always been incredibly impressed with Mayor Iveson, how he speaks. When he does the acknowledgement, it really speaks to the fact that the different Indigenous nations and cultures, they went up the different trails, and that's where those larger trails that we know today we drive our cars on, those were Indigenous trails. And so he understands that history, and I'd love for city employees as well as us to get a better sense of our Indigenous history there. So I just want to make sure that we go further on that. The last thing I'll mention here, actually two more things. One is just the events and those additional steps, the land acknowledgement, the training. Those are all good things, but the next step that we've got to take is how we actually embedding these policies within our organization. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's what I want to make sure that we're looking at internally. So again, you're talking about the HR front. How are we making our, when we're putting out job postings, are we considering, is this an attractive posting from an Indigenous perspective? How are we going through and reviewing that and saying, hey, in order to attract some Indigenous talent into our organization, is this something there? And I've seen firsthand an example of having one job description and then completely rewriting it, and just the different impact of folks applying. So those are the type of things that I think we need to get to. ensuring we've got that Indigenous perspective in our organization. And the cultural piece, great, but we need to have Indigenous people in our planning department, in our communications group, in our economic development. We've got to get that perspective embedded within the organization. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that's what I want to see out a bit more out of this, is that action plan. How do we get that perspective within our organization, more than just some help to organize a treaty event here or Orange Shirt Day there. Again, not taking away from those things, but we've got to be able to embed that piece in our organization. So I'll leave it there on that front. The last thing I'll say is, this is I could spend a whole day, rolling my sleeve up and getting into this type of conversation, and I'll leave that as something for consideration. You referenced this Beaumont interagency group, and I'm sure Mike will be nervous about what I'm about to suggest here. But is there a way for council, maybe not to participate in that, but just some way that we can just sit down and roll up our sleeves and just have a day and just go through this and get a better understanding and give more of our perspective and vision. I'm obviously speaking very fast. I could speak for hours on this stuff and ask questions around it. And I think that's I recognize it's an administrative role, but we're looking at directionally of how we can shape this city. And I'd love that opportunity to do that. So, for that future council, I'd highly recommend, just early on, just getting in and just walking through all this and start giving us a chance to weigh in as opposed to a council night. So thank you for all the effort for bringing this report. It was a great read. A lot of work went into it. So I'll leave it there. Just a couple of suggestions from me on that. So thank you, Your Worship.
Appreciate that, Councillor. Councillor Danyluk, followed by Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I will keep my comments brief. By previous councillors touched on many good points. I won't belabor those points. They're all great points made. Ms. Wilson, Ms. Sangster, thank you for the report. A great read, a lot of good information. I won't go down the rabbit hole on the staffing thing, Mayor Stewart, but I'm surprised how small your department is. I thought it was bigger, honestly. That's all I'm going to say about that, as per Mayor Stewart's request. Not go down that rabbit hole, and I won't. My last comment is, I think if I was to say what is the best kept secret in Beaumont, I would probably say FCSS. Especially in the pandemic, it's been a lot of great work done by this department, and I think honestly, it's probably one of the most under-known departments within Beaumont. And I think we, as Councilman Manuka mentioned, we need to, going forward, find a way to better communicate to our citizens the role of FCSS in our community and the work that they do. It's a great thing, but it's honestly not being critical, but it's a best kept secret, the best way I can put it. So we need to change that, and that's all I'll say this evening. Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stout, to wrap it up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm probably going to reiterate a whole bunch of things that have already been said, so I'll try and keep this brief. Great report. Thank you very much. Lots here to read, think about. A lot of good work, a lot of great work, actually. Reading through it, and I just wanted to pick up on the themes of that other councillors have raised on prioritisation. Reading through it, I'm struck by just how difficult this must be to prioritize, because there's so much here and it's all important, and most of it's pretty urgent. And it's the difficulty of prioritizing is always that, well, I have to decide not to prioritize that A is more important than B and C, and resources are always constrained, as we've discussed. Like Councillor Danyluk has suggested, yes, I imagined that your department was bigger than it actually is. So resources are always constrained, which means that if we're doing A as the top priority, then B and C might take a long time to get done. And reading, if they're at the bottom of the priority, then maybe we never get to them. Reading through the report, I'm struck by, there's quite a few things not started. There's quite a few things that were delayed by COVID. So recognize how difficult this is to prioritize, and we really want to do them all. So for my 2 cents worth, the one that sticks out to me that I would like to see high on the priority list is, I think it's on page A11, continue to provide opioid and cannabis education in partnership with other service providers. I think that's really important. I think that addresses a problem that's much bigger than most of us realize, and that needs to be, that for the welfare of the municipality, that we need to address now and in future. So I'm glad to see that's on there. I'm glad to see that you're expanding the workshops in collaboration with AHS Addictions. That you're expanding the workshops. Certainly, if AHS can bring resources to bear as well, that's great that we can access those. And I would support that as well. Question is, that's actually written in a future tense that you're to do that. Am I to assume that this is another COVID holdup, that we can't really do this because there's nowhere where we can invite people to do it until the restrictions are lifted?
In order to address that, so your worship, through to Councillor Stout, absolutely, we have been providing opioid, cannabis awareness information sessions. They did switch to obviously an online format during COVID. And what we discovered is this group, this demographic, don't like online. It did not go well. It did not go well. And I think really one of the reasons for that is when we've done our presentations before, we've either gone into schools, and schools were not allowing us in, of course, because of COVID. And B, the presentations that we were giving before, we were actually really personalizing. We would often have a member of the RCMP that would be collaborating with us. We would have Alberta Health Services talking about more the medical side of opioids, and then FCSS would provide that very much that lived experience, and even have a family or a family member that was impacted in some way by opioids. That we couldn't really do online. It doesn't translate well, it doesn't work, but there is something special in that combination of using the three service providers, the lived experience, because that gives the realness to it that resonates with, with our, whether it's our parents, whether it's our youth. And so we certainly intend to get back to those post-COVID. In fact, I had a conversation with the detachment commander yesterday. He's very, very interested in partnering with us on those workshops in the future. Is the future this fall? We hope so. Not sure. But absolutely, they were reporting, 500 opioid overdose deaths, I think, were the latest stats that were reported for Alberta. That is significant. That is almost a pandemic in itself. So there's a lot of work to be done in that area, and we recognize that we are just one partner amongst the others to basically increase awareness, work on prevention, harm reduction, and some of those other strategies that are so desperately needed.
Thank you. I completely agree with everything you've said there. I probably shouldn't have laughed earlier when you said this doesn't go so, because it's a serious matter. I didn't mean to make light of it. When you said this doesn't work so well online, but that's pretty much what I would have expected, and I think it's exactly what you referred to. It's the lived experience component of it. It needs to be face to face, or at least in close proximity. That's really all I've got to add to that. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So once again, great report. Call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimously. We've been now sitting for an hour and 40 minutes, and we've got 2 items done. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break and try to get back and power through the rest of these in a time.